Hello students, hope you're safe and healthy. Welcome to my channel. My name is Priya Khan. Today we will be starting our second chapter, The Establishment of the Company Rule. Let's travel back in time and find out historically how the company established its rule. Without wasting time, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful country with rich culture and diversity that had a glorious past. Some say at that time it also had a bright future, and this beauty is what always attracted foreigners. In due course, many foreign powers came to her, but they never left. They became a part of this rich nation and thus adding more flavor to her cultural heritage. But suddenly time changed when the European explorers started searching for new ground, mostly to trade. With time, they started conquering nations after nations to rule. Among their many such conquests, our very own India happened to be one. Now, let's take this story ahead and understand under what circumstances India was when the British first came here. Now, you must know that many foreign invaders came to India attracted by its rich culture and heritage, and many established their reign over its various regions. But it was only British that established its sovereignty over our motherland in her entirety. They came to us under the disguise of being traders, but they turned out to be like those guests who came to our home but never left. During that time, there was a huge demand of cotton, silk, spices, raw materials in the European market, and these were available in India in abundance. So initially, when they came as traders, they could make a lot of profit out of us in foreign market. And the funny thing is that the small trading company in the name of East India Company, the British were reluctant on acquiring territories in India. You must be thinking, how did they manage to become the masters of such a vast empire? Well, the story goes like this. When the East India Company came to our country, India was under the Mughal rule. Aurangzeb, the last powerful Mughal ruler, was at the throne. He had established control over every large part of the Indian territory, but with its center based at Delhi. But unfortunately, after his death in 1707, many Mughal governors called Subedars and big zamindars began asserting their authority and establishing regional kingdom, and they emerged as powerful regional kingdom in various parts of India. Now, as a result, Delhi could no longer function as an effective center. But even after Aurangzeb's death, the Mughal emperor continues to be symbolically important. In fact, a massive rebellion broke out in the year 1857 against the British rule. That is when Bahadur Shah Zafar, the then Mughal emperor, was seen as a national leader. Once revolt was put down by the company, Bahadur Shah Zafar was forced to leave the kingdom and his sons were shot in cold blood. Did you know that in the year 1600, the East India Company had acquired a charter from the ruler of England, Queen Elizabeth I? Now, this charter granted the East India Company the sole right to trade with the East. Now, this meant that no longer any other trading group in England could compete with the East India Company. With this charter, the company could venture across the oceans looking for new lands to buy goods at cheaper price and carry them back to Europe to sell them at higher price. The company did not have to fear competition from the other European companies like Portuguese, Dutch, and French. Now, in those days, mercantiles companies make profit by excluding competition so that they could buy cheap and sell at higher price. But unfortunately, for the Royal Charter, they could not prevent the other European powers from entering the eastern market. As it so happened that the Portuguese had already established a base in Goa by the time the first English ship sailed down the west coast of Africa around the Cape of Good Hopes and crosses the Indian Ocean. In fact, it was Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, who had discovered this sea road to India in 1498, and by the early 17th century, the Dutch too were exploring the possibilities of trade in the Indian Ocean. The French traders also followed soon, but these European traders only wanted to buy and sell goods. So, where did the problem lie? The problem was that all the companies were interested in buying the same thing, the fine quality cotton and silk which were produced in India and had a big market in Europe. Pepper, clove, cardamom, cinnamon too were in great demand, and these led to quite a bit of competition among the European companies at that time. So, obviously, they had to push up the price at which these goods could be purchased, and this reduced the profit they could earn. Now, the only way the trading companies could flourish was by eliminating their rival competitors. The urge to secure market therefore led to fierce battles between the trading companies. Well, they did that by regularly sinking each other's ship, blocking each other's route, and preventing rival companies from moving away with the supply of goods. And this took place mostly during the 17th and the 18th century. It was a time when trade was carried on with armed and trading posts were protected through fortification. Now, this effort to fortify settlements and to carry on profitable trade also led to an intense conflict with the local rulers. The company therefore found it difficult to separate trade from politics. Now, this picture is a painting by William Simpson in 1867, where we can see local boats bringing goods from ships in Madras. Now, let us find out how this happened. Let's go back in a little bit of history. It was on the bank of the river Hooghly that the first English factory was set up in 1651. Now, this was the base from where the company's traders used to operate. The factory had a warehouse where goods for export were stored. It also had offices where company officials sat. When the trade expanded, the company persuaded the merchant and the traders to come and settle near the factory. Now, by 1696, it started building a fort around the settlement, and after about 2 years, it bribed Mughal officials into giving the company zamindari rights over 3 villages. One of these was Kalikata, which now grew into the city of Calcutta or Kolkata as we know it today. It also persuaded the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb to issue a Farman, which is a royal order granting the company the right to trade duty free. The company continuously tried to press for more concession and manipulated the existing privilege. For instance, Aurangzeb Farman had only granted the company the right to trade duty free, but there was some officials of the company who carried out trade privately. They were very much expected to pay duty, but they refused to do so, causing an enormous loss of revenue for Bengal. Doesn't it make you wonder how the then Nawab of Bengal, Murshid Quli Khan, not protested? Now we can see that through the early 18th century, the conflict between company and the Nawabs of Bengal had intensified. After the death of Aurangzeb, the Nawab of Bengal asserted their power and autonomy as the other regional powers were doing so at that time. So, then Nawab of Bengal, Nawab Murshid Quli Khan, was followed by Ali Vardi Khan, and then Sirajuddaulah as the Nawab of Bengal. Now, each of them were strong rulers. They made it difficult for the company to carry on trade. They refused to grant company concession, demanded large tributes for the company's right to trade, denied any right to mint coins, and stopped it from extending its fortification. Now, it so happened that the Nawab claimed that the company was depriving the Bengal government of huge amount of revenue and undermining the authority of the Nawab. So, thus began the politics. But sadly, this was just the beginning. They said that it was refusing to pay taxes, writing disrespectful letters, and trying to humiliate the Nawab and his officials. So, to answer back the company, the Nawab declared that the unjust demand of the local officials were ruining the trade of the company and that trade could flourish only if their duties were removed altogether. The company was convinced in order to expand their trade, it had to enlarge its settlement by buying villages and rebuilding its forts. The conflict led to many confrontations and finally culminated in famous Battle of Plassey. Let's begin our journey to know the circumstances which lead to the Battle of Plassey. Now, it so happened when Ali Vardi Khan died in 1756, Sirajuddaulah became the Nawab of Bengal. That's when the company became worried, as he was indeed powerful. The company wanted a puppet ruler who could willingly give them trade concession and other privileges. So they tried to help one of Sirajuddaullah's rival to become the Nawab, but they did so without any success. Then a very infuriated Sirajuddaulah asked the company to stop meddling in the political affairs of his dominions. He also asked them to stop fortification and pay revenue that were due. When all the negotiation failed, the Nawab marched with 30,000 soldiers to the English factory at Kasam Bazar, captured the company officials, locked the warehouse, disarmed all the Englishmen there, and blockaded their English ships. After that, he went on to march to Calcutta to establish control over the company's fort there. On hearing the news of fall of Calcutta, company officials in Madras sent forces under the command of Robert Clive, reinforced by the naval field. Now, this was followed by the prolonged negotiation with the Nawab. Finally, in 1757, Robert Clive led the company's army against Sirajuddaulah at Plassey. Unfortunately, Sirajuddaulah lost the battle. One of the main reasons for the defeat of the Nawab was that the forces was led by Mir Jafar, who was one of Sirajuddaullah's commander-in-chief. The thing is, he never fought the battle. Clive had sadly managed to turn him against Sirajuddaulah by promising to make him the Nawab, and the only way he could do so was by crushing Sirajuddaulah. So that's how this battle became famous. It was the first major battle that the company won in India. But things did not stop after the defeat of Sirajuddaulah. After the Battle of Plassey, Sirajuddaulah was very brutally assassinated and the traitor Mir Jafar was unjustly appointed as new Nawab of Bengal. But the company still did not want to take any responsibility of administration. All it wanted to do was to expand their trade. The company wanted to do this without any conquest, and if the local ruler were willing to grant them trading privilege, then what made them change their mind? Well, soon the company discovered that this wasn't as simple as they thought would be, as even the puppet Nawabs were not as helpful as the company wanted them to be. After all, they also had to maintain a basic appearance of dignity and sovereignty if they wanted respect from the public. Now, let me give you an instance where the Nawab complained about the East India Company. It all began in the year 1733, where the Nawab of Bengal had said something about the English trader, and it all goes like this. Quote, when they first came into the country, they petitioned the then government in a humble manner for liberty to purchase a spot of ground to build a factory house upon, which was no sooner granted but they built a strong fort, surrounded it with a ditch which has communication with the river, and mounted a great number of guns upon the walls. They have engaged several merchants and other to go and take protection under them, and they collect a revenue which amount to rupees 1 lakh. They rob and plunder and carry great number of the king's people, both male and female, into slavery into their own country. Unquote. So now, what could the company do when Mir Jafar protested? The company overthrew him and installed Mir Qasim in his place, and when Mir Qasim complained, he in turn was defeated in a battle that was fought at Buxar in the year 1764. This battle was fought between the British East India Company, led by Hector Munro, and the combined armies of the Nawab of Bengal, Mir Qasim, the Nawab of Awadh, Shuja-ud-Daulah, and Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. But unfortunately, they were defeated. After the defeat, Shah Alam II was forced to sign the Treaty of Allahabad. The treaty granted the British Diwani or revenue collection rights of Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. Shuja-ud-Daulah was made to pay rupees 50 lakh as war indemnity. The company started appointing residents in the Indian state like Murshidabad. Now these residents were either political or commercial agents, and their job was to serve and fulfill the demands and interests of the company. Through the resident, the company officials began interfering in the internal affairs of the Indian states. They tried to decide who would be successor to the throne and whom to be appointed in the administrative post. Sometimes the company forces the states into a subsidiary alliance, an alliance between princely states of India and the East India Company. This battle led to complete financial control of one of the richest states of India by the British, and this permanently sorted out the British financial problem. Now students, the battle we have talked about, like the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar, were the battles between the British East India Company and the Indians. Beside these wars, the British were also engaged in many wars with their rivals, that is French. Let's see what are those wars. A lot of wars were fought between the British, the French, and numerous independent rulers and their vassals in the middle of the 18th century. These wars were known as Carnatic Wars. First Carnatic War started from 1746 and ended in 1748. In this war, the British captured the French ship and Pondicherry was under threat. The French, in turn, led by Dupleix, attacked the British settlement in Fort St. George in Madras. The Nawab of Carnatic supported the British. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, 1748, ended the First Carnatic War. Through this treaty, the French got Louisbourg region in North America and the British got back Madras. Then come the Second Carnatic War, which started in 1749 and ended in 1754. After the death of the Nizam of Hyderabad in 1748, a civil war for succession broke out. This opened a window of opportunity for Chandra Sahib, who wanted to become the Nawab of Arcot. This battle is now known as the Second Carnatic War. In this battle, the French and the British supported opposite groups in Hyderabad and Carnatic. The French were defeated and Dupleix had to leave for France. The British were successful as they followed a bold plan led by Robert Clive to occupy Arcot. The death of the Nawab, supported by the French, resulted in Muhammad Ali Khan Walaja, whom the British favored, became the Nawab. This war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Trichinopoli in 1755. This treaty demanded that all the territories captured by the French be returned. The conquest of this war was that all obstacles in the path of the British were removed. Then comes the Third Carnatic War, which started in 1757 and ended in 1763. The outbreak in 1756 of the 7 Years' War in Europe resulted in renewed conflict between the French and the British force in India. The Third Carnatic War spread beyond southern India and into Bengal, where British force captured the French settlement of Chandranagori, now Chandranagar, in 1757. However, the war was decided in the south. A British commander, Sir Eyre Coote, decisively defeated the French under Cote de Lille at the Battle of Vadivas in 1760. After Vadivas, the French capital of Pondicherry fell to the British in 1761. The war concluded with the signing of the 1763 Treaty of Paris, which returned Chandranagore and Pondicherry to French and allowed the French to have factories in India but forbade French traders from administering them. The French agreed to support British client governments, thus ending French ambitions of settling up an empire in India and making the British the dominant foreign power in India. That's all for today. In our next class, we shall continue with the story of how the British expanded its empire, what were their annexation policies, what were the reforms measures undertaken by the company. Till then, stay safe, stay home. Thank you.